Okay, so we're going to be changing the struts on an Audi A7, same thing for an Audi A6. First step is get that wheel off, 17mm studs. Goes pretty easy after you get it all jacked up and everything. And then most difficult part in this entire install are these upper control arms. Sometimes they pop right out, sometimes they take 3 hours to get out, and that's why I'm redoing another video on this side. But if you have the right tools, you can make it easier on yourself, and I found that out the hard way yesterday. So let's go. First step is going to be taking this off up here. I believe that is a, yep, that is a 16mm up top. Yeah, that comes off, and then you'll use, or like I was saying, you'll use a pickle fork to get these in here and lift it up to pop them out of here. They just are held in by this one long bolt, but these clamps here actually get really tight and deformed, and you need to use a pickle fork or a tie rod end separator, formerly known as, to pop those out. All right, let's do it. Okay, bolt is out, came out easily. Sprayed a little PB blaster on there just to see if I can get these to squeak out a little easier when I hit them with the pickle fork. I'm going to put a jack under here, raise it up a little bit to take some pressure off of these. As you can see, they're angled downward, so if I can get them kind of parallel with him with the pickle fork, this should take some friction off there. So, all right, let's do it. Sure what size to buy. On the left, I have, I believe they're calling it a tie rod end separator, which all it really means is it's 15/16 wide, and the ball joint separator on the right is 21/32 wide. It's actually a lot wider, so we'll see which one works, and I'm sure both will work, but never hurts to have an extra tool. And we will just work that up in there. Looks like it's going to be that one. Work that up in there and just give it a whack, and it should be good. So it should pop right out. I might apply a little heat to it because it's kind of a chilly Tennessee morning. I might be seasoning up that aluminum a little bit, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so these are really, really tough, and I probably damaged that boot, but I don't really give a shit. So you gotta get a wedge of a chisel in there and get that gap to open up, and then you gotta get your pickle fork on top and pound it until it pops off. Okay, so both of those upper control arms are off. Now we have to go to this guy, this sway bar link, remove that, and then loosen that so you can swing it down. It's going to be instrumental in helping get your strut out of the way once you release all this. So I'm going to jack it up a little bit more to take some pressure off of that tie rod end, or the sway bar link. And I believe that is that's either a 16 or 18. Let me double check. Okay, so sway bar link has been moved down there. All we have left is to take this bottom bolt out from the strut and remove these cables on the back side, these brake line cables off of the strut, and then we'll go up top and remove the top bolts. I'll show you how that's all done. Okay, keeping it jacked up is a good idea to get this bottom bolt off. That's an 18 down there at the bottom of the strut. 18 nut and bolt. Jacked it back down, took the pressure off that bolt, and you got the nut off, and I'm just gonna give it a tap tap taparoo to get it out. Bolt is off. And now we need to move on to the top. So you gotta remove this big front fascia here. No instructions necessary. You pull the trim right here and it literally just lifts right out. I'm pretty sure there's actually nothing holding it in place. At least mine didn't have any clips, and I bought mine new. So kind of interesting, but considering Audi bolts everything down like crazy. But okay, to actually get to it here, so on the other side you've got a small clip. Let me move on over. Other side, you've got this 12 point, I think it's an M10 right there. You got to remove that before you can actually get to this nut down here. But that's the only difficult thing on this side. Nothing in the way. disregard this little bolt here. I think it's just a ground, but these are the 4 that you're going to take off in order to get that strut assembly to drop down. These are 13mm sockets, and they come right out. So, all right, so I dropped all 4 bolts on top. As you can see, this one is a little shitty coming out, but I have an impact and it just bumps right past that. This one, same thing. They kind of reverse engineered things, but it'll go. You just got to give it hell. It'll go. And once you do that, this just drops down, and you got to do some finagling around all these brake cables to get it out, but it comes out. So strut assembly is out. As you can see, got it all out. Jacking it up there at the end helps lift up all these components to help you finagle it around. Next step is going to be putting on the spring compressors. Make sure we compress those evenly, and then deconstructing the strut assembly. And I'll show you how to do all that step by step safely. Take it apart. The thing I want you to notice is that you've got this little tab right here. This little tab needs to line up with that little groove right there. So that groove needs to line up with this tab when you put them back together. The most dangerous part, but I have good MacPherson spring compressors that I trust with all my heart. What we'll do is evenly crank these down and get it to just to where your strut will actually be able to rotate within the housing, and then you'll be able to go up here to the top. And I'll show you the special tool you need for that. You got to put a key in there with a socket on the end, and then put a pass-through socket on so that you can loosen that up, but do not loosen this until your springs are fully compressed. Okay, I believe I have it adequately compressed here. So I've got this 18mm pass-through nut on the end, and I'll show you how those go on. I've also got a 6mm key. I had to order a full set of these on Amazon. It was like $70, but that's a lot cheaper than the $1,500 they wanted for this repair. So this will be the 10mm end that you use to put a ratchet on there to keep it from spinning, and this key end will go in to the top of this nut here, and then your pass-through socket goes right over top of that, like so. And then I use a 7/8 inch wrench on that to loosen, and then I keep it stable with the 10mm ratchet right here. And then as long as your spring is tight and compressed, that should come right off without exploding. Just so you can see my setup here, and I just hold that ratchet in place, and then I just work this to continue to loosen it. The nut, this bushing, and then a small washer is right here. Put it back in there so we don't forget. And then you just pull your strut out of the middle, and it'll all come off with your bump stop there. The old one, got the spring, got the top and the bushing off, and we got the new shock here. So next step is we gotta take off this bottom mounting housing on the actual strut and on the old one, and put it on the new one. Like I said, you got to line things up. You want to get them pretty lined up, but once they're in the assembly, you can loosen it up and get it to line up perfectly with that bottom bolt on that side if you are having issues getting it in. Once you get the bolts off, sorry, those were 18mm. We've got that little mechanism that goes there. Just take note of how it was on there. Once you get those off, it's a little tight still, so you gotta kind of get a hammer down in there. I hammer that down, and then it comes right out. And I use that to make my adjustments on that to make sure I get it lined up correctly. 60 nanometer, whatever, in the Audi manual, but I think it's like 50, 60 pounds. I just crank it till it's tight. I don't crank the hell out of it. I just crank it till it's tight. Okay, and then bless me. I'm going to go ahead and loosen these up evenly. And as I noted before, we've got this tab here tab right here is lined up with that tab down there, but I can always adjust it. And one other note is I didn't tighten these all the way. I'm leaving it loose until I actually get this strut assembly back in so that I can get it where I need to down here on this bolt, and then I'll tighten it up later. Yo, finished product. I use these Excel-G by KYB strut replacement. It was like 50 bucks on Rock Auto. $100 for 2 of them, and then I think 50 to 75 for the key tool set that I needed. Other than that, pickle fork, stuff like that, I mean $250 minus the cost of all my other tools that I own into this job, as opposed to the Euro shop wanted $1,500 just to do this, and it's worth 6 hours of my time. I'm going to finagle it back in and put it all back together, starting with the top bolts, and that helps line it all back up. But basically just do everything I just did in reverse, and you're complete. So pretty easy, except putting those control arms back in is actually kind of a bear, but I just use a C-clamp to do it, and I might show you that on the back end, but I'm going to do everything else basically in reverse right now. Okay, so as you can see, it's riding like a champ. There's nothing much else into the rest of the install other than just doing it backwards from the way you took it all apart. The hardest part is getting those upper control arms back in, like I said, but you can just use a C-clamp, put one end on top of it and one end on the bottom, and just clamp it down until it goes back together, then slide that bolt back in, and you should be good to go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Fixing this Audi A7, can work for an A6 as well. So hopefully this was a little bit more informative than the silent KYB video. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks. Bye.